Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be heading back to the Wild West,
Ooh.
a time of boom towns and outlaws,
Yeah.
where the line between hero and villain
Right.
could get pretty blurry.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the Pinkertons,
Yes.
America's first private detective agency.
Mm-hmm.
They were involved in some of the most famous cases of the era,
Yeah,
but their methods were often controversial.
for sure.
So,
Mm-hmm.
are you ready to uncover the truth behind the legend?
I am.
All right,
Let's do it.
let's dive in.
Well, the story really begins with one man,
Okay,
Alan Pinkerton.
okay,
And just imagine this.
okay.
He was a Scottish immigrant
Ah.
who started out as a barrel maker.
Really?
Not exactly the typical path to becoming a legendary detective,
No.
right?
It does make you wonder how he made that leap
It does.
from barrels to detective work.
Yeah, well, it turns out
Yeah.
Pinkerton had this incredibly sharp eye for detail. He kind of stumbled into detective work by uncovering a counterfeiting ring.
Oh, wow.
And, that case really sparked something in him.
Yeah.
And he quickly gained a reputation for being this brilliant investigator.
That's amazing.
Yep.
And that reputation led him to found the Pinkerton National Detective Agency.
Yes, it did.
I always think about that logo.
Oh, yeah.
The all-seeing eye with the motto, "We never sleep."
Mm.
Talk about making a statement.
Oh, it was brilliant marketing for the time.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, this was a period when crime was just rampant,
Right.
especially in the rapidly expanding West.
Of course. Yeah.
And bank robberies and train heists were major problems.
Yeah, for sure.
Law enforcement was often stretched thin.
Yeah.
So the Pinkertons stepped into that void,
Okay.
promising to be relentless in their pursuit of criminals.
Wow. So they were going after some pretty high-profile criminals too, right?
They were.
Not just small-time crooks.
No, they were involved in some of the biggest cases of the era.
Like protecting President Lincoln.
That's right. Before Lincoln even became president,
Okay.
the Pinkertons uncovered this plot to assassinate him
Oh, wow.
on his way to Washington, D.C.
Wow.
So they ensured his safe passage
Uh-huh.
and even continued to protect him during the Civil War.
So they were with him for a long time.
They were.
Oh.
This case alone solidified their reputation as a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, protecting the president, foiling assassination attempts. It
Yeah.
sounds
Right.
like something out of a movie.
It does.
But I'm guessing it wasn't all
Right.
glamorous stakeouts and daring rescues, was it?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things that made the Pinkertons so effective
Right.
was their meticulous approach to investigation.
Okay.
They were pioneers in creating the first criminal database,
Really?
complete with photographs and aliases of known criminals.
So they were basically the forerunners of modern criminal profiling
They were.
and intelligence gathering.
Absolutely.
Wow. It's amazing to think how they revolutionized law enforcement with that
Mhm.
system. Did it actually help them solve cases?
Absolutely. Before the Pinkertons,
Yeah.
tracking criminals across state lines
Yep.
was incredibly difficult.
Okay.
Their database allowed them to share information
Mm-hmm.
and identify criminals,
Right.
even if they used different names or disguises.
Okay.
It was groundbreaking at the time,
I bet. Yeah. It makes you wonder if they realized just how impactful
right?
their methods would become.
I know.
I mean, we still rely on similar systems today.
We do.
Right.
Without a doubt, their work laid the foundation
Yeah.
for many of the law enforcement techniques that are still in use today.
Wow.
But as with any powerful tool,
Yeah.
there's always the potential for misuse.
That's a great point. And I think that leads us to some of the more controversial aspects
It does.
of their story, doesn't it? Like
Yeah.
their pursuit of some of the most infamous outlaws of the West.
Yes.
The Jesse James gang, Butch Cassidy, and the Sundance Kid.
Mm-hmm.
Those cases were legendary.
Oh, for sure.
But they also raised questions about the Pinkertons' methods.
They did. The Jesse James case, in particular,
Yeah.
was a turning point.
Okay.
The Pinkertons' raid on the James family home
Hmm.
resulted in the death of Jesse's young half-brother
Oh, wow.
and severely injured his mother.
Oh, my God.
It sparked public outrage
Yeah.
and debates about whether the Pinkertons had gone too far.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that even in the pursuit of justice,
Mm-hmm.
things can go terribly wrong.
Yes.
And that even those tasked with upholding the law
Right.
can sometimes cross the line.
They can. And it wasn't an isolated incident.
Oh, no.
The Pinkertons' involvement in labor disputes,
Okay.
particularly the Homestead Strike of 1892,
Mm-hmm.
further tarnished their reputation.
Oh, wow.
They were hired by Andrew Carnegie's steel company to break up the strike,
Oh,
and the confrontation turned violent.
Oh, God.
resulting in several deaths and injuries.
That's a dark chapter in their history.
It is.
It makes you wonder if their focus shifted from protecting the innocent
Yeah.
to serving the interests of the highest bidder.
It's a valid question.
Yeah.
And one that raises some uncomfortable truths about the power dynamics of the time.
Yeah.
The Pinkertons, despite their early successes
Right.
and reputation for crime fighting,
Yeah.
ultimately became embroiled in these conflicts
Okay.
between powerful corporations and the working class.
So it seems like the Pinkerton story isn't a simple tale of heroes and villains.
No, it's not.
It's a complex and nuanced story
Yes.
about power, ambition,
Yeah.
and the blurred lines between right and wrong.
Absolutely.
But we're just scratching the surface here.
We are.
There's so much more to uncover about their legacy
Mm-hmm.
and how it continues to shape our world today.
That's right. It's true. Their story's full of twists and turns.
Yeah.
We talked about their early successes, their innovative methods, and the controversies that ultimately overshadowed their legacy.
Right.
But the Pinkertons didn't just disappear after the Homestead strike.
No, they did it.
Their story continues even into the 20th century and beyond.
That's right. I remember reading that the Pinkerton Agency still exists today.
It does.
It's hard to imagine those Wild West detectives evolving into a modern security firm.
I know.
But I guess they've always had a knack for adapting to the times.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Over the years, they transitioned from chasing outlaws on horseback
Yeah?
to protecting businesses, investigating fraud,
Okay.
and even providing security consulting services.
Wow.
It's a far cry from their roots, but there's a clear thread connecting their past and present.
What kind of thread? I mean, how do you go from busting bank robbers to, say, cybersecurity?
It's all about information, really.
Yep.
Think about it.
Yeah.
The Pinkertons were pioneers in gathering intelligence, analyzing data, and using it to prevent crime.
Okay.
Those skills are just as relevant in today's digital world
Right.
as they were in the Wild West.
So even though the tools and technologies have changed,
Right.
the core principles of their work remain the same. It's fascinating to see how they've managed to stay relevant for so long.
Exactly. And it speaks to the enduring need for security
Yeah.
and the constant evolution of the threats we face.
Right.
But as the Pinkertons story shows,
Yeah.
that pursuit of security can sometimes come at a cost.
Right.
We've already talked about the ethical dilemmas they faced.
Mm-hmm.
And those same questions continue to be relevant today,
Yeah.
especially with the rise of private security companies worldwide.
It's like a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It is.
On one hand, you have these companies providing essential services,
Yeah.
protecting people and property.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, there's always the potential for misuse of power,
Mm-hmm.
for private interest to override public good.
It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And one that requires careful consideration.
Okay.
The Pinkertons' legacy, for all its complexities,
Right.
serves as a reminder that we can't simply outsource our security
Yeah.
without asking tough questions about accountability, transparency, and the limits of private power.
It makes you wonder if there are any lessons we can learn from their story,
Yeah.
both positive and negative,
Mhm.
that can help us navigate the ethical challenges of security in our own time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the most important takeaways is that technology alone isn't enough.
Okay.
The Pinkertons were successful because they combined cutting-edge techniques
Mm-hmm.
with a deep understanding of human behavior, motivations, and vulnerabilities.
Okay.
That human element is still crucial,
Right.
whether we're talking about cybersecurity or protecting critical infrastructure.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
It's easy to get caught up in the latest gadgets and algorithms.
right.
But at the end of the day, security is about people protecting people.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires empathy, critical thinking, and a willingness to adapt to ever-changing threats.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Right.
We can't just rely on technology to solve all of our security problems.
Right.
We need to invest in training education and fostering a culture of vigilance and ethical decision-making.
Okay.
The Pinkertons' successes and failures offer valuable insights
Yeah.
into how we can strike that balance between security and liberty,
Uh-huh.
between innovation and responsibility.
Their story really highlights the interconnectedness of past and present, doesn't it?
It does.
How decisions made decades or even centuries ago
Right.
can still ripple through time shaping the world we live in today.
Exactly. History isn't just a collection of dusty old stories.
Yeah.
It's a living, breathing tapestry woven with threads of ambition, innovation, conflict, and consequence.
Yeah.
And the Pinkerton story is a particularly vibrant thread in that tapestry, one that continues to unravel and reveal new insights even today.
That's awesome. It's crazy to think how much the world has changed, since the Pinkertons first started out.
Right?
From the Wild West to the digital age, they've kind of witnessed it all.
They have.
But I'm curious, with all the technological advancements we've seen, are there any parallels between their methods and the way security is handled today?
And that's a great question.
Yeah.
And the answer might surprise you.
Okay.
While we don't have horseback chases and shootouts anymore,
Right.
many of the core principles the Pinkertons used are still relevant today.
Okay.
Take surveillance, for example.
Okay.
They were masters of observation and information gathering.
So even back then, they were like keeping tabs on people.
Absolutely.
Wow.
They would blend into crowds, stake out locations,
Wow.
and gather information from witnesses.
Oh, wow.
They were pioneers in developing surveillance techniques
Okay.
that are still used by law enforcement and intelligence agencies today,
Wow.
albeit with much more sophisticated technology.
Right. It makes you wonder what Alan Pinkerton would think
I know.
of things like facial recognition software and GPS tracking.
Right.
Seems like a natural progression of the methods he pioneered.
I think he'd be fascinated
Yeah.
by the tools we have at our disposal today.
Yeah.
But I also believe he'd caution us about the ethical implications of such powerful technology. Yeah. Remember, the Pinkertons weren't always on the right side of history.
Right.
Their involvement in labor disputes showed how easily surveillance can be used to suppress dissent and control populations.
It's a chilling reminder that technology is only as good as the people wielding it.
It is.
Yeah, it can be a force for good, helping to prevent crime and protect the innocent.
Mm-hmm.
But it can also be used for more nefarious purposes.
Exactly. And that brings us back to one of the central questions of our deep dive.
Okay.
Can private security ever truly serve the public interest?
Mm-hmm.
The Pinkertons' legacy is a cautionary tale,
Yeah.
showing us both the potential and the perils of privatizing security.
It's a complex issue with no easy answers.
It is.
But I think it's a conversation we need to have,
For sure.
especially as private security companies play an increasingly prominent role in our lives.
I agree. We need to be mindful of the ethical considerations, the potential for conflicts of interest, and the importance of transparency and accountability.
For sure.
The Pinkertons' story, for all its flaws,
Yeah.
can serve as a valuable case study as we navigate the evolving landscape of security in the 21st century.
It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And I hope our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so.
It's been a fascinating journey back in time,
It has.
exploring the legacy of the Pinkertons
Mm-hmm.
and the enduring questions they raise about power, justice, and the pursuit of security.
Well said.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the Pinkertons.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you've enjoyed the journey.